What's up, people, and welcome back to Dante's Inferno, one of the greatest pieces of literature ever goddamn written. I'm really excited to crack on with this book. Slight bit of housekeeping here for the time being. The most recent lecture currently has more views than the original lecture, and that's because I posted it into Reddit. Lots of people liked it. I got a bump of about 80 views. Wonderful, fun stuff, and then I was banned from Reddit. For no reason. So there you go. But it won't keep the wisdom down. We've got work to do, fellas. And ladies, of course. So we're going to be reading Canto II today. This is the last canto, or the last section of the poem, before we actually get into hell properly. So it's almost like a little bit of extra fluff before we actually get into hell. Now, it's not actually fluff, because nothing in this, not a single line in this, is fluff itself. But, there are a few important things we have to get out of the way before we move on into hell, including, most prominently, what the hell the role of Beatrice is going to be to Dante. Because we all love Beatrice. Beatrice is a great character. I can't wait till you actually meet her. And you will meet her in this, actually. It should be very exciting. So, are you ready, people? I'm ready. I'm very excited. Please ignore my dog in the background if he starts barking. The day was going, and the brown evening was taking all the creatures of the earth away from toil, and I was the only one preparing himself to undergo the battle, alike of the journey and of that dutifulness which the true memory will recollect. So remember in the last time, Dante and Virgil, they just met. So Dante was climbing up this hill. There were 3 animals that jumped out at him, and then he went screaming down the hill going, "Save me, dear Jesus, save me." And he met Virgil, this old Roman poet, who came to escort him into hell. And we're like, well, what the hell is this? We don't really know why he's here. We don't know what's going on. Let's just go to the afterlife, my friend. And Dante was like, okay. So what was he doing? He's obviously been fumbling around with Virgil, presumably looking for hell. We don't know. They might have got some lunch. Who cares? Been a couple boyos. And it looks like that the sun is currently going down. So it says that as the day was going, it was taking all the creatures of the earth away from toil. Now, obviously, when the sun goes down, usually animals go to sleep. And if you go to sleep, you go into unconsciousness. And unconsciousness, generally speaking, is a land of dreams. And usually being in an unconscious state, in a dreamlike state, is pleasurable. Usually. So unless you're unconscious in your waking life, then that's absolute hell on earth, as we learned from the first time when Dante was full of sleep. But they're being pulled away from their toil to go off into the land of dreams. And then the next day when they arise, their consciousness comes back up again, and they'll have to suffer through another day. So that's happening, and he's saying that I was the only one preparing to undertake the battle. It's like, what the hell are you meaning, battle? What is this, like the Hobbit Battle of the 5 Armies stuff coming up? I hope so, but not quite. No, it's a moral battle, what he's doing. Imagine if you could see your psychic state currently reflected on the world outside of you. That does happen in Jungian psychology. When the shadow projects onto the outside world, you get to, if you interpret it properly, then you get to actually see what's going on deep inside of you. And the anima and the animus do this too. So it is a moral battle to try and contend with the deepest parts of yourself, to try and integrate those parts of your psyche, to really come to terms with the fact that you're not a good person. So Jung considered that the individuation process, which is this process of maturity for somebody late in life, was a really big moral battle to try and integrate the self into the ego and vice versa. Path of maturity. And that involved actually seeing reality for what it really, really is. And that's a hard thing to do, as most of you do. It's like, it's really hard, first of all, to admit that you've done something wrong, right? It's like children can't do it, but you instill that virtue in them, don't you? It's like children do something bad and you're like, say you're sorry. And saying sorry is some kind of virtue. And it's like, yeah, because it's hard. But now what happens if it's even more unconsciously entangled? What if there's all the little tiny sins that he's been doing for years have been staggered up against each other, and now he has to face them head on? Say, well, this is what's going to happen if you do this. This is what's going to happen if you do this. And some of these sins are going to be particular to Dante. Now, obviously, I don't imagine Dante was a particularly violent person, but he was quite a politically violent person. He was, and he says this later on, is actually a virtue. And maybe he was a liar. Maybe he was deceitful to people. Maybe he was full of sexual sin. So he's actually going to go and see what the hell's going to happen. And not only that, see the promise of what will happen if he actually overcomes all this lost unconsciousness that he's in. So that's very interesting. That's why it's a moral battle. Not only does he see where he is now, but where he could be. And that's an internal struggle like no other. That is the story of your life. if you distill it down to its basis, it's the story between good and evil, fundamentally. And the good and evil that you're doing and that you're capable of. So, yeah, he needs to get himself ready. I'll put it like that. Moving on. So he says, O muses, O profound inclination, help me. O memory, which recorded what I saw, here will be shown what there is noble in you. Now, the muses, what's he doing? He's walking down with Virgil. He's like, oh, muses. So that's a very interesting thing. Excuse me while I have a cup of tea out of my fiance's Disney mug. Lovely. Englishman. So, the muses were goddesses back in ancient Greece, ancient Rome. They basically shared the same pantheon of gods. And the muses were essentially the patron saints of the arts and the sciences and bards and poetry and things of that nature. So when Homer began his epic poems, it was like, tell me muses. This is what happened at the very beginning of the Odyssey, for example. Tell me muses. So it's almost like Homer was calling upon the god of bards and the god of poetry to sort of help him and energize him. And Virgil actually does the same thing in the Aeneid. So when he's calling out to these muses, these goddesses of poetry, he's like recalling to you that he needs not only to have courage to do it, that he needs outside help, but that he wants to do the best possible job possible at recalling what he's going to do. It's like, of course he is, because it's a moral battle he's going into of the highest degree possible that anyone has ever faced. You know, it's like, where were we? Yeah, and he's saying, oh memory, he will be shown what there is noble in you. It's like, that's very interesting. You can interpret that multiple ways. It's like, what there is noble in his memory? Yeah, he's going to tell you what the truth is. He's not going to bullshit you. He's going to tell you exactly what's going on for you and for everybody else in the afterlife, or the psychological point of view, what your current fate is and what your eternal fate is if you continue doing the things you're not meant to be doing. You know, or to show what is noble in you. That by showing you these things, that you will actually get a spark of, a little bit of divine inspiration almost. If you'll pardon the pun there. It's like, I see what's happening for me, and I'm going to do my very best not to go down that pit. You know, so he's almost like he's taking care of you. He really wants to tell you the best. I began, poet, who you are to be my guide. No, he didn't say that. I began, poet, you who are to be my guide. Consider whether my strength is adequate before you trust me to make this terrible passage. So basically, he's doubting himself. He's been a bit of a doubting Thomas here. There's no wonder, man. It's like, could you do this? Could you go into hell? In all your current normal state? You're not a Greek hero. You know, you're not Christ. You're not, I imagine you're not. You probably wouldn't be watching these lectures. You'd probably be off on some kind of odyssey somewhere. But could you do it? Of course you're going to doubt your strength. He's a mortal man. He's lost in a forest, for crying out loud. And this guy, his great hero, has said, we're going to go do the greatest adventure of all time. So, yeah, he's like, so poet, meaning Virgil, please consider whether my strength is adequate. Basically, am I good enough? It's like, well, maybe, maybe not. You tell me that the father of Silvius, while still in nature, went to eternity and was there with the use of all his senses. So this part carries on for a bit. But so he's telling Virgil, you tell me that the father of Silvius, the father of Silvius was Aeneas, who was the main character of Virgil's masterwork, the Aeneid. And there is a scene in the Aeneid where Aeneas, the main character, has to go into hell. And he does a whole bunch of fun things in hell. So he's basically saying, your great character, who may or may not be historical and may or may not be mythological, I don't know. I also don't happen to care, because you're Virgil, you shouldn't really be here anyway. We might as well treat the Aeneas, the Aeneid as a real thing. He's saying he went to hell, right? That's who the father of Silvius is. But if the adversary of all evil was courteous to him, when one thinks of the great effects which follow from him, not only who, but what, it does not seem unsuitable to a man of intellect, nor that he was chosen in imperial heaven to be the father of bountiful Rome and her empire, the city and the power which, truth to tell, were there established for the holy place, where the successor of great Peter sits. So he's basically saying, you know who else went to hell, Virgil? Aeneas went to hell. He was a great man. He was also the founder of Rome. Am I this man? Now, he talks a little bit more later on about perhaps potential qualms he has with the Roman Empire in general and the papacy in general, and that will become clear. But what he's really referring to here is, this is a great man who, as far as I'm aware, was like one of the only people who's ever been to the afterlife. And look what he did. And look what I'm doing. There is no comparison there. I can't do this. You know, he's like stopping at the start line. He's like, I can't. I physically cannot do this. It's like, who the hell can blame you, man? It's okay, Dante, if you're watching this from the afterlife. It's okay. I accept where you're coming from. By this journey, for which you praise him so, he came to understand what were the reasons of his victory and of the papal mantle. And afterwards the chosen vessel went there to bring back reassurance for that faith, which is the beginning of the way to salvation. But why should I go there? By whose permission? I'm not Aeneas, neither am I Paul. Neither I, nor others, think that I deserve it. So somebody else has also apparently gone to hell. This is Saint Paul. You've probably heard of Saint Paul, if you're aware of Christianity. One of course, the great saints. He was blinded on the road to Damascus, got a vision of Christ, responsible for lots of the works in the Bible. A fantastic bloke. Best compliment I can give him, I guess. So there are these two great individuals. So Aeneas, this Roman hero of mythology, and Saint Paul, maybe the greatest Catholic saint, have both gone to hell. And me, you want to put me in the company? What a joke. By whose permission? Yours? You're a silly man. So he's basically questioning, like, why have you picked me? And it becomes abundantly clear why he was picked, and it wasn't Virgil's choice either. Therefore, if I resign myself to going, I fear my journey may be a foolish one. You are wise and understand more than I say. So, yeah, basically he says, I will go, but I think it's a fool's errand. But, of course, I'll follow you anyway because you're my great master. So there is some humility there, but he's still doubting himself. And if you... This is a thing that happens all the time in the self-improvement community and with stoicism and the manosphere, things like that. People trying to make themselves usually better men, but better individuals in general, is you need to have the G mindset. Like, you need to think to yourself, I'm capable of absolutely anything. And if you don't have that mindset, then you probably won't achieve anything. Now, what Dante's coming up against is the greatest possible moral challenge he could ever do. Right? I can't imagine something tougher than that. And he's not a passive observer in this either, unless you're a psychopath. To be shown raw reality in all of its good and evil form, you can't not be touched by that. So either he has to take it on board, which is really, really tough, or live the rest of his life in eternal fear of complete and utter annihilation and damnation. So this is huge, and he hasn't got the right mindset for it. So this is why, like, just pure humility isn't enough. You've got to also believe that you can do it. Because just humility, it's like, it doesn't matter if I do it or not. Yeah, it does, because you're not going to be able to do it. When it gets tough enough, then your humility's not going to stand. It's like, the real humility would be to say, I cannot do it, and step back. But Dante does not do that. And just like somebody who shilly-shallies and thinks again about what he has decided so that he gives up everything he has started, I found that I was on that obscure hillside. By thinking about it, I spoiled the undertaking I'd been so quick to enter upon in the first place. I like that, actually. Somebody who shilly-shallies? Yeah, okay. So merely by thinking about this and stalling, he'd spoiled it. And it's exactly the reasons why I said. It's like, you're meant to go headstrong into this like a capable man, but he's doubting himself. And doubting Jesus' resurrection, for example, you know, the doubting Thomas phrase, is not a virtue. It's like, why are you doubting? Why are you doubting the truth? Capital T, truth. Why can't you do this? Because if you can't do this, what the hell makes you think that you're capable of reaching heaven? Or reaching the way? Or insert secular phrase you might be comfortable with here. What makes you think that you can go ahead and do that? If you haven't got the mindset. You know, if you can't reach that, then you're screwed anyway. It's all in or all out. There is no middle ground. So that's why he's ruined it. He's even doubting whether or not he should have asked Virgin in the first place. Another cup of tea, please, people. This is tiring work. So, if I have understood what you said, the reply came from that shadow of generosity, your spirit is touched by cowardice, which sometimes lies like a load on men, and makes them flag, so that they turn back from the fittest task, like an animal, which mistakes what it looks at. That's interesting. So you're touched by cowardice, obviously. Because if you won't do something out of fear, that makes you a coward by definition. Now, what's interesting is the Bible says that cowards go to hell first. They're the first people to go to hell as cowards. That's very, very interesting. Dante says similar things in the Inferno. That's very interesting. It's almost like the fact that you're not all in means you're already doomed. That's very, very powerful. Like, there's been so much powerful stuff in this book so far. Like, doing the last lecture floored me, people. But if you're not all in on your journey to reach the way, and I imagine if you're watching this, either you're a student, whatever, that's fine, carry on. But if you're watching this out of like your leisure or your free time, it's like you clearly have an inclination to reach the way. And you and I and everyone else is slipping up on the way in innumerable measures. But the thing is, if you're not all in, you're doomed. You don't stumble onto the way. So if your mindset's not all in, and your actions aren't attuned to the highest resolution to be all in, you ain't going to make it. You're touched by cowardice. And cowards are the first ones who go to hell. So it lies like a load on men and makes them flag. So they turn back from their fittest task, like an animal which mistakes what it looks at. It's not a virtue. But so that you may rid yourself from fears, I will tell you why I came and what I heard. At the point from first, I became concerned for you. So he's like, you may be a coward, but let me reassure you anyway. So I'm not giving up on you. Let me boost your strengths. We all have a temporary stumble. Virgil's like, it's just a temporary stumble, my man. I'll help you. I was among those who were in suspense. And a lady called me, so blessed and beautiful, that I at once begged her to tell me what I should do. The shining of her eyes was more than starlight, and she began to speak gently and quietly, with the voice of an angel, but in her own language. Now, before we get on to what this mysterious lady said, which you could probably guess who this mysterious lady is, he says, I was among those who were in suspense. What does that mean? In suspense for what? He's just waiting for Judgment Day? Is he waiting for something to come onto Netflix? Like, no. What he's doing is he's in limbo, basically. So Virgil is actually this is going to sound really mean. He's technically in hell. He was a pagan, so he doesn't get to heaven. He doesn't even get to struggle up to heaven in purgatory. He's in hell. So he's in suspense. He's not in torment. He's in the area where people sigh a lot. Basically, they're like, like, so he's in suspense. He was basically chilling for all eternity. He's like, okay. So and a lady called me so blessed and beautiful. So again, these feminine words. That at once I begged her to tell me what I should do. This is fascinating. So if you read the divine feminine as being the anima is way bloody stronger than you are. And the ego, which is you, so the you that's your center of consciousness, whenever the anima, the divine feminine, comes by in the unconscious or projection onto the outside world or in specific manifestation of individuals that are kind of close to the archetype, you are enamored by these people. You are completely taken hostage by these people. So that's what Virgil did. He's just literally chilling with the boys, and then the boys who are in limbo, and then this divine feminine comes along and he's like, you are way more interesting. Why? Because, well, obviously she's way more interesting because she's beautiful, first of all, and that's what men are like. But at the same time, it's like she has this divine quality to her, which is going to attract you to it instantly. And it says, interesting as well, it says, the shining of her eyes was more than starlight. Now, if you think of the Jordan Peterson man, I still can't do that. The Jordan Peterson idea, it's not his, it's Pinocchio's idea. Walt Disney's articulated idea of wishing upon a star. It's like the star is something that shines out of the darkness and is above you and is like a promise of something transcendent. That you can wish on that, and it's a light in the darkness, right? And because it's above you, it's like a guide to you. And people used to use the stars to guide themselves at night. They are guides. And her eyes was more than starlight. So it's like if you can wish upon her eyes, basically, that there's some great transcendent promise in there. And this is what we've talked about with Beatrice before in the first lecture. It's Beatrice was the one who, because of her level of divinity that inspired such powerful and deep romantic divine love for her that Dante was able to be saved. That she was, I mean, in his own life, he was able to be saved. And spoiler alert, you guess what's going to happen in this. There's way more to the book than that, but that's like a theme. That this particular love saved him. It's like, that's exactly what it's portraying in her physical description. That her eyes are these stars and that they can guide you. This pierces through the darkness. It's got a promise to them. So she's got a voice of an angel. There you go, enough said on that. So this is what she said. O courteous spirit of that Mantuan, whose fame endures still in the world, and will endure as long as the world itself shall last. My friend, who is not also the friend of fortune, on the desert hillside, is in such difficulty, making his way that he turns back for fear. So he's calling out to Virgil, courteous spirit of that Mantuan. So I'm not entirely sure what that is. It's like, it's one of the few things I wasn't sure, and I should have looked that up actually. But it was something to do with Rome, basically. He's a son of Rome, something like that. Whose fame still endures in the world and will endure as long as the world itself shall last. Yeah, because you're reading this, or you're listening to me reading this. Therefore, he still lives on in your brain. He will live on forever as people still remember his name. This is why I love the Disney Pixar film, Coco. I think it's the best Pixar film ever made. Completely unrelated. But because that theme is so powerful, that you only really die when people don't remember you anymore. So it's like, we're remembering him now, so she's actually completely true. She says, my friend, meaning Dante, who is not also the friend of fortune. What's fortune? It's like being lucky, right? So they say fortune favours the prepared, or fortune favours the brave, something like that. It's like whatever the way the universe is flowing to lead you in like the right direction, he's going that way. It's like, what's he doing? And what she referenced specifically was a specific line I drew your attention to last time. She says, making his way that he turns back for fear. So if you remember when Dante was stumbling in the forest, so full of sleep, like a sleepy lad, and he saw this hillside, he started to climb it. Not immediately. He still stumbled for a bit. He started to climb it, but then turned around out of fear or out of curiosity, out of something. Something stopped him committing to going on the proper way. So making his way that he turns back for fear. So she's confirming now that the primary thing we were speculating about in Canto 1 was indeed fear. So there you go. You can sleep easy now. And I fear that already he may be so far lost. Remember the forest? He's in the forest, the metaphor for being lost. That I have risen too late to be of help from all that I have heard of him in heaven. That's interesting. So he's halfway through his life. He's completely lost. He can't climb the hill by himself. So, and he's so fearful. And he's a bit of a coward. So, what's going to get him to climb the hill? He's basically doomed without divine intervention. If you take the forest as a metaphor for his life, he's completely and utterly doomed without some kind of divine intervention. You know, this is why Beatrice was the saviour, because Beatrice here is the saviour. In real life, it was the saviour. That's what got him on the proper way. Hence why it's in this. But he would have been completely screwed. And he says that I've risen too late to be of help from all that I've heard of him in heaven. It's as if all the people in heaven gossip about who's being a good boy and who's a bad boy. It's like Santa. It's like, we haven't heard of Dante. He's not on the nice list. He's on the naughty list. He's doomed, basically. And then she says to Virgil, now leave this place, and with your apt speech, and whatever may be necessary for his escape, help him, and so bring consolation to me. That's very interesting. She says to Virgil, leave limbo. You're free to go back. And with your apt speech. Now, a really big Christian idea is the idea of the Logos. And the Logos is the spoken word of God, which created reality out of potential and created order out of chaos. It's the masculine principle personified in speech. So speech and logos are like simultaneous, or truthful speech and logos are the same thing. Because you do the same thing as God did at the beginning of time by speaking truthfully. Capital T, truth. So what's correct in a moral sense. You speak it. You do not lie. Lying is like, you don't lie. Lying gets you into hell. So by using your logos. Now what was what was Virgil doing with all of his work? It was poetry. So he's using words. He's using words that have moral meaning to them to inspire people, to tell you the truth about certain things. And that has a redeeming quality to it, clearly. Now, interestingly, the Logos itself, as this redeeming quality, is not ranked as high as the divine love. It actually mentions this it mentions this in the next paragraph, actually. That's clearly not ranked as high. So it's not Virgil's work that saved him. It's not somebody else's work that saved him. It's not words. It's the divine love, the eros quality. And this all makes perfect sense in Jungian psychology from the masculine logos requiring a higher developed eros. Why do I pronounce that word so weird? To reach God, basically. Very, very interesting. So leave this place, and with your logos, basically, whatever may be necessary for his escape, help him, and so bring consolation to me. So Beatrice actually gives a shit about him. She actually cares. Now, I don't know if this is like a fan fiction on Dante's part, that Beatrice actually does care about him, but it's as if, because the divine feminine exists, its mere fact of existence has within its purpose to redeem the men who fall in love with it. Because otherwise, what else is it there for, evolutionarily and archetypally speaking? So Beatrice in many ways does care about him. Beatrice as such, as an essence and an energy, and as an archetypal quality, not necessarily Beatrice the lady, because chances are she probably didn't. I mean, she only met him, what was it, 3 times? Two or three times? And then she died really young, like 25 or something like that. So it's getting very interesting, getting very Jungian here, people. This is getting exciting. I am Beatrice, lo and behold. And that is why I send you. The place I come from, I also wish to return to. It is love which makes me speak to you as I do. So he even cements it there in that line. The reason why she's speaking to Virgil, the reason why she is trying to help Dante, the reason why she is moving out of her normal state down there to a more uncomfortable place, it's out of love. Now, it's not erotic love. It's a deep love for the spark of divinity within an individual. And in the modern world, we are so cynical of this. We're so cynical of this. It's like we think that the only thing that exists is like self-interest, and there is no altruism. It's like self-interest. But I mean, the deepest quality of Christianity is God's love will redeem you. So Dante obviously changes it and makes it his own by saying Beatrice's love will redeem you. But she says it black and white, right? Literally black and white, because it's in ink on the page. It is love which makes me speak to you as I do. Fascinating. When I am back standing before my master, I shall often talk about you kindly to him. So it's almost giving him an incentive reward. So she was silent, and then I began, meaning Virgil. O lady of power, through whom, and through whom only, the human race is better than all the rest, under that heaven which bends closest to earth. This is fascinating. This is big, people. Look, it's Beatrice on my old mug. Snow White, the anima, Beatrice. I'm not editing that out because I don't want to. He says, "O Lady of Power, through whom and through whom only." Now, unless it's a dodgy translation, which is not, it's a good translation, the old Oxford World Classics edition. Why does he say only? I mean, there's other ladies, which you're going to meet in a minute. There's other people there, like Mary, for example. She's a pretty big one. You know, there was Mary Magdalene, for a start. Loads of female Christian saints. So, why is it through whom only? Because every individual is the centre of the world. That's why. Every individual, through their actions, makes the entire world tip closer to heaven or to hell. Through whom and through whom only. It's like, you could be saying that to anybody, but it is still you only. It's a weird paradox in a way. It's, without you, the world would be a better or worse place, which puts you at a crux point. You are simultaneously the centre and not the centre, but you're still the centre. That's very, very interesting. And also because, you know, if you think about this, whatever Beatrice did to Dante, whatever words she said, whatever values her parents instilled in her, she was very young. whatever character's trait she developed, whatever he heard about her, it was enough to inspire not just Dante to turn his life around and to live a good life, but it was enough to inspire this. And this has saved countless lives. This has created or inspired countless pieces of literature. So the actions of one person, some obscure girl from Florence in the 1200s, look at what it did. Same thing with you. Maybe Dante will be, maybe Virgil will be saying that to you someday. It pleases me so much to have your command, that if I had done it already, I should think myself slow. There is no need to explain your wishes further. He's like, done and done, deal, thank you, I love you so much. But tell me why you do not hesitate to come down here into this central place, from the ample heaven to which you burn to go back. So he's like, wait a minute. Why have you come here precisely? Like, heaven's way nicer. Why have you come down to see me? It's like, maybe you could have called me up. I wouldn't mind. You know, you could have put in a word with the big man. You know, why have you come here? We could have met middle ground, maybe. You could have sent a messenger, like an angel or something. Why have you come? So then Beatrice comes back, being a nice, proper chatty box girl. Since you would like to be so far informed, I will tell you briefly. So she replied to me. Why I am not afraid to come down here. One has to fear only the things which have the power of hurting others. For the rest, they do not matter. They are not to be feared. Basically, Beatrice has given you a definition of whether or not you should be scared of something, which is very useful. So the definition is, so when you come up against something, test this in your mind. Does it have the power of hurting others? Presumably you by that extension. So when you come up against somebody who has a knife, should you be afraid? Yes. That's perfectly reasonable to be afraid. A madman with a knife. A job interview? Beatrice would say that's silly. Something which doesn't directly cause harm to you. Now the definition of harm is dodgy. It's like psychological harm, physical harm, something like that. But then, she then elaborates. And I am made by God, I thank him, so that all your suffering has no effect on me, nor am I touched by all these burning flames. Now this is interesting. This is where it extends beyond. Maybe a job interview will hurt you, or a driving test will hurt you. You know, the mere act of going to them will cause you distress, which is harm. We shall say. You should only, or the power of hurting. It's hurt. It causes hurt to you. But at the same time, if you have your psychology straight, if you're on the way, if you're aligned towards that star that you're wishing upon, the hypothesis here is that either it doesn't hurt you, or it shouldn't hurt you and you're being a bit silly. And this is a weird thing. It's like, the higher up you go and the better you live, the easier you cope with suffering. If you watch people around you, this is a little observed thing, but if you watch people around you, it seems to be the case. Now, are they still distressed? Yeah, of course they are. But if you can imagine, the way is a very, very difficult thing to align yourself on. Very, very difficult. And if you think of it in terms of like a monk or a nun, something like that, we'll say they're on the way spiritually, psychologically, more than the average person. And psychological distress bounces off of them. It's really weird. When you look at warrior cults, psychological distress bounces off of them. Like the samurai, they didn't bat an eyelid about having themselves kill themselves in front of their emperor because they surrendered. They didn't bat an eyelid. It's like, what the hell is that all about? Seems the closer you are to the way, the closer you are under God's command, under God's shadow. It's a voluntary thing on your behalf, and therefore he protects you. That's cool. Like, if you're in a depressed state and you stub your toe, it's way more likely to crush you than if you're really living a wholesome, happy life and you can just laugh at it and go, oh, Satan, stubbing my toe. Something along those lines. Very interesting. We've been going for quite a while, Jesus. We've still got a page to go. There is a gentle lady in heaven who has pity on this difficulty I am sending you to, so that the sharp judgment of heaven is broken. So basically he's saying the Virgin Mary is, she was like, this is going to be quite difficult, and I'm sorry for you, but it must be done. So she's hanging out with the Virgin Mary, for crying out loud. And then what happens is the Virgin Mary called Lucy to her, and her request was this. And she goes on and says the request of Lucy. So let's just break this down. So you've got Virgin Mary in heaven. She's sort of chilling, doing Virgin Mary things, being a virgin, I presume. And then she has a messenger called Lucy. And this is Saint Lucy. And I'll go into this in a moment. You have this St. Lucy girl, and then underneath her you've got Beatrice, who receives the message of St. Lucy. And then underneath Beatrice you've got Virgil, who receives the message of Beatrice. And underneath Virgil you've got Dante. So what you can do is actually scale like a heavenly hierarchy of things. It's like of people closest to God, the closest to the way, the people who are living the best way possible. It's like the people touched by divinity the most through voluntary action. It's like, this nice little hierarchy here. So St. Lucy, for example, very old Christian saint. I think it was like 300 AD, something like that. And very young girl. If you look at portraits of her, pictures of her, she's not very attractive, but she was a virgin. So obviously this is a value, and there are reasons why virginity was valued so highly. Not only is it something like you can resist temptation, especially the most pervasive temptation of them all, which is sexual temptation. But you're living according to God's words. It's like not only are you resisting things, but you're also being obedient to something. They're subtly different things. And there's no spread of diseases, which is wonderful. There's no unwanted pregnancies, which is wonderful. Not necessarily defending it, but it's like that's why it was in our weird cynical world where everything religious is bad or arbitrary. It's like no, that was why. It'd be better for everybody if people didn't sleep with people when there are diseases going around. Put it like that. But what happened to this girl? So she was asked to worship a false idol, basically. And then she was butchered and tortured to death in the most horrible ways possible. And there are really weird legends around her. So the reason why she's like a saint and that she's blessed by God and that she's so high up, she's hanging out with the Virgin Mary, is because like one story is she was burned alive, but she was fine, and then she got out of it again. It's like, yeah, that's pretty terrifying. The last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, my channel's namesake, Jacques de Molay, he was burned alive, and he was a very Christian man. But he was burned alive and he died horribly. And it wasn't even like a normal burning alive for him either. It was like you feel every inch of fire on your damn body. Now, he actually did manage to curse the Pope and the French king. But nothing like this Lucy girl. She was able to walk out of the fire and be fine. And the other one, the really famous one, there's horrible pictures of this online, is they gouged her eyes out for torture. And then apparently God healed them again. There's this horrible picture. I'll overlay it over the screen, screw it. And you can see it now. It's like she's there holding a tray with these two eyes on top of it. These like her holy eyes. She's the patron saint of eyesight. She's patron saint of several things. It's like not completely canonically clear, but she's the patron saint of eyesight, which is fascinating. It's like, why would the patron saint of eyes and having this eye imagery associated with her come and save Dante? Well, duh, it's vision. It's vision, of course it is. It's like illumination. It's like, what's the specific word? Illuminating grace is what one Dante scholar called it. Illuminating grace. And that's what stars do. They make you see in the darkness. That's what Beatrice's eyes are. They light up the darkness. It's what this heavenly hill is. It's lit up in the darkness. It lets you see the proper way. That's why she's there. It's symbolism like that. So this Lucy girl who was sent by the Virgin Mary to Beatrice in this heavenly hierarchy of command to talk to Virgil and to get Dante to stop having sex with wolves, said, "Your devoted follower needs help. I commend him to you to do the best you can." Obviously meaning Dante. Go save Dante, basically. "Lucy, the enemy of all cruelty, stood up and came to the place where I was, and where I was sitting with the ancient Rachel. I presume," I can't find reference to this online because no one cares in this much detail as much as me, apparently. "I presume Rachel is the wife of Jacob, the infertile one, the really famous one. I presume. So I don't know what the symbolism of that's supposed to mean. Unless it's more sort of virginity symbolism in like infertility in that particular manner. Or if she's just hanging out with Old Testament characters because it's a fun fan fiction, basically. This is like real life fan fiction as well as the greatest moral tale of all time. And the greatest love story of all time. There you go. She said, so Lucy said, "Beatrice, you who are a glory of God, why do you not help him who loved you so greatly, that for the sake he left the common crowd? Do you not hear his pitiful complaint? Do you not see the death he is struggling with by that river over which the sea is powerless?" That's interesting. Let's go over that. Let's go over that one more time. That was very interesting, people. So she's asking Beatrice, why do you not help him you love so greatly? Now, is this her saying, why are you currently not helping him? Or is it a rhetorical question? I don't know. Imagine it's a rhetorical thing. Why don't you go help him? Unless she already knows and she isn't helping him for the time being. Maybe she's got faith in Dante, that he can do it himself, that her divine love within his lifetime, which she talked about in the first canto, would be enough. Perhaps it's that. That for your sake he left the common crowd. Yes, imagine the common crowd. It's like NPCs, and everyone's got the same set of morals. They're not great in a moral sense. They're not great in a great man sense. He's just hanging around. But because of Beatrice and the love that he inspired in him, he left the common crowd. He went to go do something of himself. He left the average, boring way, the sort of doomed to hell or purgatory way, and went off down his own path. I've abandoned my dog for too long, apparently. We've been going for, 40 minutes? Jesus Christ. Where the hell was I? Sorry, people. Do you not hear his complaint? So obviously he's walking around the forest complaining to himself, just like my dog is complaining. Do you not see the death he is struggling with? Now, this is so fascinating. We mentioned in the first canto that he says that, what was it? Death itself is not more bitter, or death itself is hardly more bitter. So comparing where he is now to death. And now we know already that from this one, he's also would have been doomed if it wasn't for Virgil coming along to save him. He would have literally been doomed to, well, hell most likely, because of those three beasts representing hell. The three things he's playing with, the things stopping him. So he's struggling with death because he may as well be dead. Psychological death. If living is an active thing, like if you say, I believe in something, it's an active thing. You actively believe. Because you don't believe in something if you're an agnostic. So technically you could say all agnostics are atheists. Because if belief is an active thing, you either believe actively, or if you're not believing actively, you're agnostic and atheist, right? That's one definition. That's one way of looking at it. But if he's not actively living, like actively on the right path, he's dead. Nobody on earth was ever more in haste to seek an advantage or to avoid an evil than I, after such words as that had been spoken. To come down here from my happy location, trusting you on account of your noble language, which honours you and those who have listened to it. Immediately hurried off, straight away. So this heavenly hierarchy operates on almost an innate empathetic sense. Like maybe this is why it's more powerful than Logos in terms of redeeming, I would imagine, specifically men. Because there is no arguing, there is no rational faculty. It's an empathetic thing. It's like, feel the burden of pain, and the innate instinct is let's alleviate the pain. So that's what they're doing. It's like, here's a message, feel through it. It's like very, very strange phenomenon. Very weird for men, because girls are way more empathetic than us if you're a man. Like, girls are way, way more empathetic. It's like, I don't know what empathy even is compared to my fiancés. It's like, very strange. Very interesting how they pass on a message with feeling, though. It's like, girls do that. When she had spoken to me in this manner, her eyes shining with tears, she turned away. And that made me even more anxious to come. There you go, feeling sending off a message. It's the eros factor. So the feminine factor, basically. And so I came to you, as she wished me to, took you away from that wild animal, which stopped your shortcut to the beautiful mountain. So this is Virgil now. Basically, he was running away from the she-wolf, Dante, and then Virgil was like, woohoo! And this is when he comes into like a little pep talk for Dante. What is it then? Why do you dawdle here? Why do you let such cowardice sleep in your heart? Why have you not more boldness and openness? So if you imagine back at the beginning of the canto, been a little while ago now, Dante was obviously like, I can't do this. I can't do it. Aeneas has been to hell. He's a manly man. St. Paul has been to hell. He's a manly man. I can't do that. I cannot do that. I'm not strong enough. And no one else thinks I'm strong enough either. But this is an interesting thing. Virgil then passes on this idea that the reason why you're going to do this is because there are people who care about you. There are energies and qualities and archetypes that care about you and want the best for you out of divine love. That's why you're going to do it. And that is so inspirational. It's like, there's like a sense of legacy there. You know, that you're standing on your ancestors' shoulders. It's such a powerful idea to me. It's almost like a very functional way of acting in the world is to have your ancestors around you at all times. To think that they're around you and that their stories and that the fruits of their labours live around you. So that's very powerful because they do live around you. Now you could think of them in meta abstract space, like up in heaven, or they exist, like in like an abstract manner around us, not actually here. Maybe they're up in a real heaven, who knows? But they are still with you in what they did and what they said and the actions that they took. And that gives you courage. Because it's very hard to be brave when you're alone. It really is. Because, first of all, what are you fighting for? Yourself? No one believes in you. And this is what Dante's saying. It's like, neither I nor anyone else actually believes that I'm capable of doing this. And it's like, well, maybe no one else does because you haven't shown virtue. Or maybe because you're lost and alone in the forest. No one understands you. Or maybe you don't know anyone. Maybe you don't have any friends. It's very difficult to be brave and to have a crusade to fight for when you're alone. People typically go out to war, a very difficult thing to do for the freedoms of their nation or to look after their families back home. They do it for a purpose. They do it for somebody else. And so what Virgil's suggesting here is you are loved by people. They sincerely care for you. We're all one big eternal family, and you should do it for them. And what's fascinating is if you consider them to be the people of the past, we'll say, and that he's the person of the present, Dante. What is he doing it for the people who are coming after him too? That it's this never-ending chain of influence. It's like, chin up, my friend. What you do sincerely matters. You, as an individual, as we saw with Beatrice earlier, you sincerely matter in everything that you say and everything that you do. So you should chin up. You should have the courage to overcome your cowardice, or else you're doomed already. And besides that, you need to have a sense of legacy about you, because that's the correct way of looking at the world. Luckily it's the correct way of looking at the world, but it's also the way that gives you the most strength. So that's fantastic. When 3 such ladies care for you in heaven, busying themselves about you in that court, and I report so promisingly to you, exactly what I've just said. As little flowers which in a frosty night droop and shut tight when the sun shines on them, stretch and look up, erect upon their stalks. So I recovered from my failing strength, my heart so filled with satisfying courage that I began, like a man just released. How generous she was to give her assistance, and how courteous you were to obey her so quickly when she proffered her help and spoke the truth. My heart is now so set in its desire to come with you, and it is your words that have done this, that I am back again with my first intention. Now go, for a single will informs us both. You are my guide, my master, and my lord. So I spoke to him, and when he stirred from where he was, I entered upon the deep and thorny way. What we've just seen there, ladies and gentlemen, is the hero's journey of Canto II. It's the story of the hero's journey. Now, the beginning of a hero's journey usually comes with you doubting yourself. Am I really a Jedi? Am I really a Jedi? I can't be a Jedi. That type of thing. And Dante doubted himself, but because he's the chosen one, because we're all the chosen one, because we've all got our heavenly family. We were all produced by the actions of, not necessarily morally great, but by definition, because they survived to live back in the past, great individuals. Because surviving was very difficult back in the day. So he was doubting things, and then he learnt a sense of legacy and was reassured that cowards are the first people to go to hell, and without being all in, you're doomed because you don't stumble on the way. It takes great moral effort. It's a great moral battle. And that's what Dante's doing. He's sharing this with you because it's the exact same thing with you. On your hero's journey, you may be waiting to go on that deep and thorny way because it's difficult. You keep turning back to the road where you're currently on. You may be kind of deviating the path, but you keep looking back on your on your bad habits, on the mean things that you keep doing, all your insufficiencies. But you need to remember the sense of legacy, the sense of divine love that the universe has for you because you exist. You know, the universe may be a cruel, horrible place. It may be full of sin and hell, and he's about to come across hell, man, like actual, literal hell. But there is still good in the world, and it loves you, and it cares about you. And that love comes in a variety of forms, and it's spontaneous, and it's divine. It's not sexual. It's not reproductive in that capacity. It's, well, God's love for you, first of all. The universe is sincerely caring that you exist because you are its energetic investment. The legacy of your ancestors is a huge one, but it seems to be this very peculiar case of the divine love. The divine love. Now, if you reverse this around, it would be Beatrice would be a man and Dante would be a woman. If you reverse it around so that Dante was a woman, Beatrice was indeed be a man. But that doesn't matter. It's the exact same thing. It's like through that kind of deep, powerful love, you are redeemed. Very, very interesting stuff. We come across some very powerful stuff here, people. I feel a bit funny, as I do after all these lectures. I want to sincerely thank you for joining me today. If you wish to discuss any of these ideas with me in great detail, up to, it's currently 5 times a week for half an hour in the evenings English time. I'm available on my Discord server on voice chat. You can talk to me about anything you want, either things related to Dante, or it could be about Jung, or it could be about self-improvement, having a mentorship thing, something like that. All it costs you is $4.99 a month to come on in. We've got about 20 people in there at the moment, which is fantastic. There are some blisteringly intelligent individuals in there. They're all having a great time. I would love to get to know you more, and I would love to see you on the other side. So if you want to support the work I'm doing here, I would appreciate it if you did it through that particular channel. It'd be brilliant to get to know you as well. So thank you, everybody. Hope you have a fantastic day. And remember that the divine love sincerely cares about you, and that you need to embark on your hero's journey. Because if you don't, you're doomed.